Hello, I'm Michelle Leduc Catlin. Welcome to episode 6 of season 2 of Trued Up, the podcast that invites you to be the change. How did we come to a place where people are attacked and reviled, not only for their personal health choices, but for the treason of being injured by a medical treatment, and the seemingly greater crime of speaking out and wanting to prevent others from being injured too? Since when did we start accusing the most vulnerable, the sick, the disabled, and the dying, of somehow betraying the trust of Western medicine because they have debilitating side effects from taking that medicine, when it was Big Pharma that has betrayed us? I don't need to tell you that we live in an absurd world where victims are attacked, their pain and suffering ignored and even denied, and those making billions from their injuries are defended. The last few years have certainly shone a light on this distortion, but it's not new. For decades, parents whose children have been injured by a variety of environmental toxins, including injections, have been gaslit to believe that this wasn't the case. In fact, the indoctrination is so great that even mentioning the V word in connection with injuries can get you kicked off social media platforms after you are very angrily and personally attacked. No medicine has no potential side effects. Yet, what other medicine insists on silence when someone is affected? What other health protocol or treatment requires total denial of adverse reactions with no other suggested cause? Even over the counter medications are advertised acknowledging potential harm. When it comes to injecting unknown substances into our bodies, mum's the word. Thankfully, there's Warrior Mom, the book and the woman. The book is not only an excellent resource for treatments and protocols for treating, not curing, autism, but it's also the inspiring story of one mother who was unstoppable in the face of huge obstacles and healed her son to the point where he is a fully functional adult. Tracy Slepcevic is that warrior mom, and she is my guest today on Trued Up. Tracy, thank you so much for this conversation today. It's really great to see you.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
I wanted to start by telling you why I asked you to have this conversation. So, you and I met last year at the Children's Health Defense Conference in Georgia, and I was so struck by your energy, by your strength and kindness. And my kind of general guideline for conversations with my podcast is this is somebody I want to sit down and have, a cup of tea with.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate the compliment.
You're welcome. So you were speaking at the conference about your son, about autism, and I have a copy of your book, Warrior Mom, which is doing weird things with my background. So
It's like there's holes in it.
I know. Look at this magic book. But I want to encourage people, whether they have any concern for autism, relationship with autism or not, to stick with this interview, because I think there's so much good information in this. And also because it really is your character, your strength of character that interests me. So I want to start by just saying, in reading this book, what really I think was confirmed for me was that you have both a very powerful internal strength, but you also have a great deal of kindness. And this, I think, is really integral to the journey with your son.
Well, thank you for that. I always say if you're writing a book, you need to do it with a purpose. And my purpose is to be in service because there's nothing in royalties. So unless you write a Harry Potter or something, but even she had to go through her trials and tribulations and starting off as self-published and whatnot. But no, it's been a beautiful journey. I'm grateful for every step of the way. I mean, Noah's doing really good today, and my goal was to just really share this with other parents so that they can skip over some of the struggles that I endured on this journey. So that was my goal
So,
for the book.
and I definitely think you've accomplished it. I think it's a tremendous resource. And again, what struck me, oh, I'm just going to turn off my mail. What struck me, well, before I get into the sort of details of the book, maybe you could just start with an overview of Noah's story.
Okay. Well, Noah was a perfectly functioning child, and right around a year and a half, he started to regress into a state of autism, losing all of his speech, motor skill, some motor skills, and cognitive function. So I spent probably over 2.5 years trying to figure out what was wrong with Noah. And every time I asked the pediatrician, she would just tell me everything's fine. This is all normal. And it wasn't. None of it was normal. And I always say God sends me angels. As you know, if you read my book, you'll hear about those angels that came into my life. And I'm telling you, at the moments where I thought all hope was lost and I didn't know what to do or where to go, I've had these amazing individuals who came into my life, and it was like, here's your direction, on so many levels. But it has, it's definitely made me who I am today. And my son gave me a purpose. So I have no regrets. And I don't really focus on the past and what was, or, I mean, there's so much out there. There's, you can have those pre-genetic dispositions and those environmental factors that contribute to the regression of a child or an individual in general. But what I really like to focus on is solutions. What can you do to, do your best to get your child to a functioning state? And I don't really say change or cured, none of that.
Yeah, I
My
noticed that. Yeah.
yeah.
Why do you
Well,
not?
a lot of people take that beautiful word called healing, and they're like, oh, well, you need to just accept your child. I accept my child no matter how he is, at every level, even now as he's 19 years old. There's always something going on, but I I definitely had my struggles going through this journey. And I didn't want parents to have to endure any of that. One, being concerned for the safety and well being of their child. And then also that horrible feeling that some of us, not all, parents have when their child is diagnosed, of feeling alone and scared and not knowing what to do, or like your child doesn't belong and where will we fit in, and what's my next step. So I just told a little bit of my story, and then I talk a little bit about, well, what are your steps? What are your rights as a parent with a child with autism? And then what are some different biomedical intervention treatments and therapies that you can take to do your best to get your child to a functioning state. And the reason I say that lightly is because there are parents out there that have tried everything, and unfortunately their child hasn't responded. But I'm here to say that cleaning out the gut and doing all these different healing modalities is not going to injure your child in any way. And it's not just for parents, caregivers. Even professionals have read my book. It's not just for them, but let's say they're a new parent. So I'll carry my books around with me wherever I go. If I see a new parent, I'll give it to them and I'll say, would you read my book if you thought that one day it might save your child's life? And I haven't had a parent say no to me yet. So I give my books away all the time. And it's definitely, created a change, for the better for these families. But I really just want to, scream loud and proud that there are a lot of environmental toxins out there. The food we eat, I was driving down the street the other day and saw at my son's old high school that they just put up this great big 5G tower right in front of the school, like an eyesore. There's one at my daughter's college right down the road. So I'm like, it never ends. But there's many, many environmental toxins out there. I list a few of them in my book. I only had so much room because my publisher would only give me so many words. But I could have gone on and on. And today there's so much more information. I tell people there are great ways of getting newer information. I love the Highwire. I love Dell. We're really good friends. He has done so much for me and my family. And there's great real news on his show. Children's Health Defense website, children'shealthdefense.org. You can look up, if you just do a search, most likely you can pull up an article on whatever that environmental toxin is and get more information. They fight legal battles. They do independent studies. And then there are other things. I tell parents all the time, you need to come together as a community. So go to conferences. That's why I started the Autism Health Summit. So it's an annual conference for autism. And next year it's in April in San Diego, and a beautiful, resort, but they can go to autismhealth.com. Now, Autism Health is now a 501c3 nonprofit organization. I'm super, super proud of it. And we help fund scholarships for education, and so parents and caregivers and professionals can go to conferences. We provide webinars, all different kinds of ways to educate parents on what to do and what not to do for your child to keep them healthy. And I believe that is just, we can only do what we can do. But when people ask me what I've done for my son, I say, well, I threw everything at that poor kid but the kitchen sink. And I still send him for his immune boosting IVs. But today he is fully functioning. He works full time. He drives, he travels, he does everything independently, which is what I wanted for my son. But I feel that if I didn't act at a very young age, that he wouldn't be where he is today. So he's still quirky in every way, and I love it. And I love that he's, we agree to disagree on almost everything. But I know he loves me. He knows I love him. And I feel that that's the most important piece of the puzzle, right?
I want to go back because the first time I heard your story, I was shocked because I actually didn't know, and I don't think most people know, that someone with autism can heal themselves to the point where they have a fully functioning life. Like, I didn't even know that was a thing. So start from what your reaction was. So first of all, when you found out, and you suspected, I know, that he had autism, what was your reaction, and what was your approach?
Okay, so here's where God sent me an angel. The very same day Noah was diagnosed with autism, I had to run back to the office, and I say there are no accidents in life, truly not. Even the what we would say bad things that happen. If you can look at the silver lining, there's something good out of it. But I was walking down the hall and I was running back to the office to grab something, and I'm crying, and I saw my naturopath walking the other way, Dr. Joshua Burka. And he stops and he gives me a hug and he's like, "What's the matter?" And I said, "Well, Noah was diagnosed with autism." And he looks at me and he said, "Noah's going to be fine." He said, "I want you to go home and I want you to do your research because kids are making great strides with biomedical intervention." Now I call him my angel doctor. And I literally, in that moment, that was my fork in the road. I could have wallowed in my own self pity. Woe is me. My kid has autism. But I did not. I sucked the tears back up into my eyes and I went home and I got to work. I went to every conference that I possibly could attend. Today, you can watch podcasts. You couldn't do these things back in 2009. I immediately started gluten-free, dairy-free until Noah had his first functional medicine visit. And then we removed sugar and we just ate real food for about a year to clean out his gut. And then we stayed on the path of eating healthy.
Let's just underline that, because I think, first of all, I don't think most people understand the food relationship, right? I think people still relate to food as something that's a bonus, like eating healthy is a bonus, but I don't think people really fully understand how impactful the microbiome is.
One, people don't realize that what we eat here in the United States, our processed food, our additives, our colors, all that stuff is like banned in 30 different countries that have socialized medicine mostly. But yes, there's a direct connection from the gut to the brain via the nervous system. So everything begins in the gut. But I tell people the first step is everything begins up here. If you truly, truly believe down to a cellular level that your child will be fine, that is the first piece of the puzzle. That is what you need to believe it for it to come to be. And there was not a single person in this world that could have told me no, I wasn't going to live a functioning life. And people who thought that I was crazy carrying around my gluten-free, dairy-free food for him and myself. Inadvertently, I ended up healing myself because I was suffering from severe fibromyalgia, chronic migraines. I mean, I can name you a huge list. But when I started following a non-inflammatory approach to eating healthy, because I grew up on processed food. If it came in a box, a can, or a package, I'm certain I ate it. Sorry, Mom, but so it was really very important to just clean out the cabinets, start over. I told my husband and my daughter, if you want to eat something else, it's in the refrigerator in the garage. No, it was too little to get into it. So at that point, Noah and I were on a healing journey together. So it's not that my book can, make a difference in just the life of a child, but also the life of any individual, because we all suffer from underlying conditions. And it's really important to begin in the gut and just eat real food.
What are you called to do? And what gets in your way? There was a time when I was self-sabotaging my own goals, my dreams, so much so that I ended up with chronic fatigue and unable to work for 7 years. Have you ever had a time when you wanted to do something to produce better results in a particular area of your life, but you just couldn't seem to get past a certain point? We all have a tendency to self-sabotage, whether it's with our health, our career, our relationships, or our finances. Maybe you're experiencing that now. And I want to tell you that it's not your fault. We are bombarded with programming that is designed to keep us weak, dependent, sick, and broke. And as someone who has been weak, dependent, sick, and broke, I can tell you that you don't have to stay there. As a certified self sabotage coach, I work with clients one on one to distinguish their unique sabotaging patterns and habits and teach you how to reprogram for success in any area of life. If this sounds like something that you'd like to explore, email me for a free discovery call to see if we're a fit. It's Michelle, with two L's and an E, at gatheryourwits.com. And now back to some empowering programming. What are some of the other? So here's the other surprise for me. I mean, I didn't realize how big my ignorance of autism was, but there were so many modalities. There are so many modalities, and you tried so many of them. Maybe you could just kind of review some of the broader categories, even so that people have an understanding of all the different things that are possible.
So we began with testing for those underlying conditions. One, pre-genetic conditions such as MTHFR, mitochondrial disorder, all those things that can inhibit the body's ability to rid itself of toxins. So these kids are more susceptible to injury via those environmental toxins. And it's good to know these things so they can be treated. And we treated with IVs, supplementation. Like I said, what you eat is very important. And just really going back to an old way of living and eating. And from there, we did some hyperbaric oxygen therapy, but I do heed a warning when it comes to young children because they have to be able to clear their ears. Noah had tubes in his ears. So he was an ear infection baby. And so he had tubes, and I didn't have to worry about him clearing his ears in a pressurized environment. So from there, we've done homeopathy. We took Noah to the Ukraine in, I think it was 2012 for stem cell therapy. So Noah regained a lot of his motor skills and like strength and functionality from stem cell therapy, and it was like almost overnight. GC-MAF injections, which is GC proteins, macrophage activating factors. So through oxidative stress, our body loses its GC-MAF that we're born with, and it breaks down our immune system. So GC-MAF helps kill off those viruses. A lot of these kids have a heavy viral load. And learning a lot about supplementation and what those supplements are for via having to put them on pharmaceutical drugs, because that's a Band-Aid. So it's going to start in the gut. And from there, hyperbarics can help for some, and some it doesn't. And same thing with stem cell therapy. There's also true dose therapy, which is out there right now. That's plasma therapy. There is MERT, M-E-R-T, which is TMS. It's transcranial magnetic stimulation. So it's kind of like a little MRI device, and it stimulates the part of the brain, the frontal lobe, that is impacted by autism and also depression. So TMS is approved, FDA approved for depression. Unfortunately, to get it approved through insurance, typically you have to try meds first. So you can choose to go the round, or I ended up paying for it out of pocket. But when my kid was a teenager and eating whatever the heck he wanted, and then, being exposed to EMF and 5G and all that stuff, then depression started to kick in. So MERT was great for that. And I'm treating PANDAS. PANDAS is huge, pediatric autoimmune neuropsychotrophic disorder associated with streptococcus. 90% of these kids that have neurological disorders, any behavioral disorders, it usually produces behaviors. Tourette's, tics, autism, ADD, ADHD, all these different disorders, any type of behavioral disorder, typically they're going to test positive for pandas. And pandas can be life-threatening. It's high levels of strep in the blood. So you definitely want to take care of that. I do find that the best way to take care of that, because we used to go a very expensive route, which was antibiotics and IVIG therapy, which is IV immunoglobulins. And IVIG is also taken from blood donors, which you have to be careful these days. So I highly recommend IV ozone therapy. The best way to do it is, to work your way up to a 10 pass, or second to that, high dose vitamin C therapy. All these are a little invasive, yes, but I can tell you that that was the best course of action versus, tearing up the gut with more antibiotics and, using something that comes from several different blood donors. So there's so much out there today, but
yeah,
getting
it's
tested for these is important. And they can go to medmaps.org to find a physician. They have a physician directory, and try and find a functional medicine doctor that treats these kids. If not, they can reach out to me at Tracy@autismhealth.com, and I will go ahead and do my best to refer them. If not, I have a great network of doctors that I reach out to.
So, I'm listening to you and imagining who you were, 20 years ago. and clearly this is not the path you thought you'd be on. And the expertise you have is quite incredible. This actually you actually became a health coach, yes?
I did. So I went back to school for alternative medicine. And I learned as much as I possibly could. But at first, I didn't have time to go to school and learn this stuff. I had to be self-taught. So I had to get my PhD overnight, at home, reading books, as many books as I can. And there's so many great books out there, to assist these parents in addressing those underlying conditions. And, there's other books that talk about what the different causes are, what can contribute to a regression of autism. But I say, you can learn the facts, the scientific facts, and move on to healing. Don't get stuck, because so many people are stuck, and that's not what I want to see for parents. I want them to have, that very focused intention to heal their child.
Where did that strength, that focus, that intention come from in you?
Well, we know that not every parent responds the way I do, and dives in head first. Some choose easy and they're like, well, I'm just going to do whatever the doctor says. Or my kid's a picky eater. Oh my God, I can't tell you how many parents tell me, well, I can't get my kid to eat that. Well, okay. I guarantee your kid won't starve themselves. But, who's the parent? So this is what I say. This is my harsh reality, that who's the parent? I had Noah throwing food at me for at least a couple weeks, not wanting to eat what I put in front of him. And, that was my own, that was the result of my actions, not knowing what to feed my kid, and feeding him processed food that have addictive ingredients and artificial colors and flavorings. And know that in the United States we can cover up anything with the word natural flavors, and MSG, all kinds of different stuff. But to really just dig down deep and find who you truly are. My mom always raised me that when I fell down, brush yourself off and get back up. So I wasn't raised to wallow in my own self-pity. And, it came in handy. I might have, given her, grief about it back in the day, but it's definitely been a great tool.
You said, I think this is, I want to talk about this attitude, right? You talk about the victim attitude, and you're very blunt with people. And I love this part because I think there's a lesson here for everybody, right? Because these days, I would say everybody is dealing with something, right?
Right.
And while it's quite intense to be a parent dealing with autism, I think we can all relate in terms of whatever we're going through. So I just want to find this section where you talk about the 3 kinds of approaches. The first approach is the all or nothing approach to heal your child. The second approach, these parents only do what's necessary to ensure their child is comfortable. And then you say, last but certainly not least, are the victims of the world. These are the parents who will cry, woe is me, my child has autism. They seek out others who will feel sorry for them or take constant help wherever they can get it in order to avoid dealing with the current situation. That's some tough love.
It is. I was taught tough love, and it is from a space of love. So it's not from, I'm not judging. I'm not here to judge. That's not my purpose here in this lifetime. We're all spiritual beings having a temporary human experience. You can look at something as, the end all be all, or you can look at it as an opportunity to learn and grow. So Noah was my opportunity to learn and grow, but also to utilize that information to be in service to others.
I see this is fundamentally what inspires me about you and about other people like you, is that you can look at something as an opportunity, as awful as whatever it is, right? Because we can't change the things we can't change, right? And you saw this as an opportunity. I think if anybody got anything out of the book, if it shook them out of that victim mentality, it would be enough, because so many people today are at the effect of, and as I said, there's lots that we can be at the effect of, but this is your message, I think, is so important today for anybody.
It is important. So recently I went and spoke at at a screening of Protocol 7 in New York. And I had one in particular couple / I'm going to zero out the father, who kept hammering at me. He was mad that my kid had recovered and not his. And I said, regardless of what the situation is, where they're going, our job as parents, first and foremost, is to love them and to be their parent. And they have their own uniqueness, and they're all very beautiful in their own special way. And if you could see it that way, life can change. But this person in particular was like, I don't see, because I said all children were blessings. And he said, my child is not a blessing. And I said, well, I'm very sorry you feel that way. And that's very sad for your child in general, which his child was an adult at this point, and he was institutionalized. So regardless, no matter where Noah would be, it would still be my job to love him. And, it's our job to love our family, our parents. We might not agree with our parents. I don't always agree with my mom. I rarely ever agree with my mom. But it's my job to love her. And she knows that I love her, and I know she loves me, regardless of how tough she can be. But it's, this is our journey. And the journey is not made to be easy. It's a long road. There's twists and turns, a few bumps, some ditches. But if you can just, live your life from a space of gratitude and just look at it with different eyes. I mean, how did Jesus look at things that were thrown at him, those that persecuted him and, contributed to his, the end of what we say his life, but not his life he lived on. And he said, I forgive you. So you have to just, one, you got to be patient. This stuff doesn't happen overnight. And I always say, don't ever give up on your child. I don't care what age they are. I say early intervention is key, but intervention in general and working with your child, no matter where they're at in life, is super important. I see so many parents that have major struggles. Their children can't speak, they have outbursts. I have a woman in London who's reached out to me yesterday. She said that, she had done so many treatments and she's like, nothing's worked. And I'm at the end of my rope. And I think I'm just going to give up and just make sure he's comfortable, give him the therapies that he needs, and so on and so forth. But to just not give up. It's a fight, but this is, whether you believe it or not, this is a contract that you had with your child before you came here, and you chose into this. So if you can look at it that way, because I'm a very spiritual person, then things can look a whole lot different.
In the world of there are no coincidences, just this morning I was writing about the opportunity of the things we don't want, right? The opportunity of every situation, right? That we can be a victim and just, how can I say this? I'm like not articulating this properly, but I do see that choosing to view it as an opportunity is the key point.
Yeah.
It's not that you're being presented with, child with autism or not child with autism. You're being given child with autism, choose, right? And you can choose that, you can resist that. And the resistance only causes more pain, but the choosing of it gives you purpose.
Yes, it does. That is the most important thing, because I even look at Noah's challenges today and how he's been brainwashed and manipulated to believe the narrative and this and that. And I'm like, I just get to love you, but I still get to inform you. You may not like it, but I still get to love you and inform you and do anything I can to get that information to him. But there's a lot of parents out there that, especially those that are non-speaking, go to spellers.com. Dawn Marie Gavin is doing some really amazing things with these kids, and there are practitioners all around. And it's super important to give these kids an avenue to communicate if they cannot speak. But your journey is going to look different than mine. And people always say, "Oh, you've done this and you've done this so great." I'm just a vessel. I'm just doing God's work, and I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. But it begins with me, right? And it begins with you, and you can make a difference. Don't think that you can't fight a school district, that you can't fight a city. And I mean, I'm burning the candle at all ends with a nonprofit organization, a conference, a book, health coaching, whatever it is that I can do to make this world a healthier place. is what I'm out there doing. But anybody could do that.
So I wanted to address this because, I'm Canadian. Canadians, I think, have in the last few years paid a price for being nice, for being polite, for not pushing back, for not asking questions. So one of the things that struck me was this, you talked about the narrative. So I want to get into the narrative a little bit. That you're being told by your pediatrician, the authority figure, who you would hope you could trust, that no, this is normal. When meanwhile, nobody knows their child like a mother knows their child. And you clearly can see that something is happening. I see that you had I don't know if it was being a mother that brought it out in you, or that you were always somebody who was going to stand up for what was right. What was the impetus for you fighting back against school boards and, doctors and all the many battles that you've taken on in the last 19 years? Or
So I
15 years.
haven't taken on school boards. I've taken on my son's schools personally.
His school.
Um, but there are those out there who are doing fabulous jobs fighting back against the school boards and what's being taught to our children. I was very clear, because my son had an IEP, that if I felt that there was something that should not be in his curriculum, that I brought it up and I said he's not to learn this. He is not to watch CNN news at school or any news, because my kid was watching news every day in school, and I didn't know that till COVID hit. My kid is not to learn critical race theory. And if a bus of doctors doing what pulls up to the front of the school and my son goes anywhere near that bus, it will not look good. So we have to be their advocates. We are their strongest advocates, and it begins with advocating for our child. Don't try and save every other child before you save your own. I see that so much. It begins at home. Once your family is in order, my husband always says this because he does disaster management. He's like, if your family is not in order, you're not to go out into the field. So if you have stuff going on at home, which means your head is not in the game here, then and that can cost lives, then you need to handle what's going on at home. So begin with your own family and make a difference in their life. I fought tooth and nail for Noah. I felt like it was a constant battle. And then when it was time and he was doing really good, and the moment presented itself for me to write a book to assist other parents, then that's what I did.
Well, it's great advice. Again, you can take that on anywhere, right? You have to deal with, you first, right? Then move outwards, right? You, your family, your community, right? I think sometimes we can sort of wear ourselves out by jumping into the fray without having taken care of, our home base first. I want to talk just briefly about the V word and the fact that, here you have a protocol that causes your son's illness. And I know you haven't said that, but you said it in the book. And you have this situation, we have this situation where not only are parents dealing with a potentially permanently injured child, but they're being gaslit, told either it's not true, or being vilified for the injury. It's like insult to injury.
Yes. Environmental factor. We'll just call it environmental factor because there's so many.
Yes, right. So how did how did you deal with that? And how do you coach parents to deal with that?
I honestly was clueless at first. I had no idea when my kid broke out in a full body rash, which was probably could have possibly been measles, and had a fever for a week. And I was told how normal it was, and all these things. But it it I had no idea. You got to understand, I'm previous military, and we are programmed that specific environmental factor is so needed and necessary. Um, so I had no idea. But yet, how I had so many health issues at such a young age, and I was active. I physically growing up in high school, I ran track, I did gymnastics, I was a cheerleader. I was like, I didn't sit still. Yes, I ate like crap. But and there's another environmental factor. But there's so many different things, and I say do your best to eliminate all environmental factors, and I mean all.
Everything you take in with your senses, everything you hear, see, eat, and surround yourself with is programming you to succeed or fail. Over the past 5 years, we have all been subjected to an enormous amount of disempowering programming. If you're anything like me, you have experienced a point where all the information you were taking in was actually damaging your health, your relationships, your productivity, or all of the above. It's why I produce programming to empower people, and it's why I became a freedom from self sabotage coach. We are living in extraordinary times, and we will either succumb to the constant negative programming or we will become alchemists and transmute our challenges into victories. We will become the people we've been waiting for. If you're interested in working with me, either in a group or one-on-one, as a coach or a speaker, just email me at Michelle with 2 L's and an E at gatheryourwits.com and let's have a conversation. Now back to some empowering programming.
Pediatrician visits, I'm here to tell you, are designed for one thing. Pediatricians are the most underpaid doctors in the industry, in the medical industry. So they have to make money somewhere else. And that money is typically kickbacks. I don't have to paint a pretty picture as to where those kickbacks come from, but and the more they do it on a regular basis, the more kickbacks they get and the bigger kickbacks they get. So you have all these doctors who are starving for money or greedy for money and are willing to put children's lives in danger. And you have those that are stepping out and that weren't willing, but they're losing their medical licenses. There's those that are like flying under the radar and being very careful. But I'm here to tell you, my son hasn't had a pediatrician since he was almost 4 years old, about 3.5. He did have a functional medicine doctor. He had great care, and he still does. And that is one thing that he allows me to oversee. He wants to do his visits all by himself because he's all grown up. And I support it. Great. I want you to be independent. Be independent. But when I say, are you open to this treatment or this therapy? If he says yes, then I move forward. If he says no, then I respect his choice, because he is a choice and I want him to have that choice. But, like I said, those pediatric visits are designed for one thing. I went to a pediatrician when I was younger for a purpose. I was sick or something was wrong. So that is where they could come in handy. A lot of pediatricians don't want to see children unless you come on a regular basis, but there are those that still do. And again, you're your child's advocate. But there's a bunch of things. When you cook on aluminum cookware, let's just say that most people don't even really know that or recognize it. That, stainless steel porous, all those heavy metals that are, the cap at the bottom are neurotoxins and they go right into your food. And the pesticides that are sprayed around your home, so I'm very much that, I have them come monthly to spray essential oils. And they have to do it often and it doesn't really work as well, but that's okay. Diatomaceous earth, it's great. It's great for so many things. You can put it in your soil. I put it around my home. I use it for parasite cleanse, cheapest parasite cleanse you'll ever do. Teaspoon of diatomaceous earth in a glass of water or juice or whatever, first thing in the morning and in the evening, and do it for a couple weeks. Give yourself a week break, then do another couple weeks, and then just do a maintenance.
It's maintenance. What does maintenance look like?
So maintenance, you can do like a couple days a week, just once a couple days a week. So, but that month-long period, but your body needs a break from the die-off because it can affect you. Because diatomaceous earth, and it's cheap. You get $20. You can get a great big bag that'll last you years. You take a teaspoon, you put it into, I just put it in water and it just tastes like chalky water. And because it's ground up like seashells, right? And it's got minerals, so it gives your body minerals. And if you put it in your soil, it gets rid of pesticides, and it also adds minerals to your food, which our soil is mineral depleted, and we need it. So I put diatomaceous earth all through my soil to get rid of the bugs, because in the bugs, it'll dry them out. In your gut, parasites can attach itself to the gut lining. And what it does is it makes these tiny little scrapes and scratches up against it until it actually kills it off and dries it out. And then after a couple weeks, you might see something, but you need to take a little bit of a break when you're doing a detox. I say first week, start with doing it once a day, first thing in the morning, empty stomach. Second week, twice a day. Try to do it in the afternoon on an empty stomach if you can. Third week, take off, and then go back to the same thing, doing it twice a week for 2 weeks, and then just the twice a week maintenance, just once a day. And the best results come when it's empty stomach, first thing in the morning. And that's your cheapest parasite cleanse. And we all, to an extent, have had parasites. So I know it's a great spot, but we've all had them. And you can put it in a little, juice or drink or something for your child. You can disguise it however you wish, as long as you get it in there. That's important. And, they have to be a certain age, but it does lower cholesterol. It helps with so many different things in the body that you can look up benefits of diatomaceous earth. And it is food grade. There's a pool grade, so you don't want to take the full grade. But super cheap.
Well, there's all these. Now, I had chronic fatigue for 13 years and I healed myself. And so I was doing daily research for 7 years when I realized I was going to have to be responsible for my health in a way that nobody else could be. And so there was a lot that was familiar, but I learned things in your book. Like, one of the things you recommend is not eating food while operating your computer. That one was like, what? So that one was about avoiding flame retardants. Because clearly, I know flame retardants are in carpets and in mattresses and furniture. It's crazy.
Volatile organic compounds. So I'm here to tell you that little plug-in or the air freshener that you guys use, candles, unless they are specifically non-toxic candles, are volatile organic compounds.
Yeah. And I also read, now I looked it up, there are regulations in Canada around VOCs, but you said there are not in the US.
Yeah. Because you guys have socialized medicine.
Right.
They don't really want you sick because they got to pay to make you better. Here in
Right.
the United States, we have to pay ourselves, or unless you're an immigrant, you get everything for free.
Yeah.
Um, so, I mean, it's, you know,
Yeah, so that was just one of the, tips that I think that's really useful in the book, because I'd never thought about it. Well, of course there would be flame retardant on the computer. And so if you're eating and touching it, yeah, it's like it's seemingly endless, but I think it's a progression, right? You learn a little bit, you learn a little bit more. I mean, learned about all the hormone disruptors in household products, in personal care products, and all of that I either make or you know
but you can get zero VOC paint. You can get
yes,
zero VOC carpet. You can buy a leather sofa. Now, that nice, pretty new car smell, you actually want to air it out as lovely as it smells. It's volatile organic compounds. So all those different things. There's a way around them, but I say don't drive yourself crazy because then you're just going to produce cortisol. You're going to live in fight or flight, and then it's just going to be your end all be all.
yeah. It's true. It's true. I know from personal experience, you can get really obsessed, and it is really about progress. One of the things that people will cite um, um, as a reason, an excuse not to, dig into a lot of the things that you did is, well, I can't afford it, right? So, and you actually went and got a part-time job as a caterer.
No, I worked in the catering department for Hyatt.
Okay,
So,
my apologies, but you went and did whatever it took.
oh, and I bartered for treatments. So, getting Noah's hyperbarics, I bartered for. I did their marketing on the weekends when I wasn't working. I sold stuff. I did spaghetti dinners. I I did whatever. If you could pick it up and put it on eBay back then, I did. And also during this time, my husband fights big insurance, so big insurance fought back. And then, he wound up on the front page of the LA Times in a smear campaign. Today, he would fit right in. But we lost his business of 20 years. So he was knocking doors, doing consulting jobs for people. And I was at home doing whatever I could. And then my nephew came to take care of my son for me, and while I could work. And, it all just, there wasn't, so like I said, if you set a clear intention, you can accomplish anything. That was the purpose for telling my story, to tell stories so people can be inspired by what I did, because it wasn't easy. It wasn't at my disposal. And I've had people throw at me, oh, well, you have money for this. No, I didn't. I short sailed my home so I could take my son to the Ukraine for stem cell therapy.
Well, this is why I wanted to bring that point up, because I think that there often is that, well, you had the money, but you didn't. You made it happen.
I did.
Yeah, it's really incredible. I asked you at the beginning, and I just want to kind of circle back a little bit to the word healed versus cured.
Yes.
Why do you not say cured?
Um, because Noah still has his challenges. I mean, he's fully functioning. He probably wouldn't have an autism diagnosis, but it's very popular to be autistic these days. So he makes it very clear to me, Mom, you can't take my diagnosis away from me. And he's still in that teenage mode of, I like playing the victim, but it's super important to support our children. But out there today, using the word cured, I've yet to see, when you have an underlying condition, even autoimmune. So Noah has autoimmune. So he's not fully recovered from autoimmune because he will most likely have those issues for the rest of his life. And unless I can find some miraculous cure, until then, he's going to have his challenges. But I really don't feel, I feel healing and when we say recovering autism, it really is to just really get them to a functioning state. If you can do that, that's success all in itself. Because everyone's gonna, Noah's like, I'm gonna eat whatever I want. So then he's gonna regress a little bit. Um, he had some weight issues. Now he's lost weight and working out. It's a learning curve. But I have yet to see any kid who doesn't have any health problems or challenges.
That's so true. Um, I want to I want to leave the last word to you. Other than saying that I highly recommend this book, I also want to congratulate you on getting reviews from Del Bigtree, Christiane Northrup, and Robert Kennedy. I think that's pretty impressive. So there's
Yes,
that.
I am blessed to have all those three amazing people in my life. So also, if people can follow Maha, Making America Healthy Again, my husband's on the board. Super excited about that. And they'll go far with that. I'm working very closely with Del Bigtree in regards to making my conference successful. So go to autismhealth.com and click on conference. If anybody ever has any questions, Tracy, Tracy, at autismhealth.com or Tracy at warriormom.org. But it's, just reach out to me. But I do ask that you read the book first. You can buy it for like $14 on Amazon. It's a very inexpensive investment in your child's future, and then ask me questions, because I put everything that I know for the most part, except updated information, in that book. So read it, then ask me. And if it's so bad that you can't afford the $14 book, I can give you a free ebook. But I do ask that you make that small little investment in your child.
Thank you so much. Thanks for this conversation, and thank you for really exemplifying what it is to see the opportunity in all the challenges that we face today, because I think this is what we need right now, is people who are seeing the opportunity of our challenges. And you are definitely a warrior.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate everything that you do and for reaching out and for, having this interview.
Thanks, Tracy. One of my favorite qualities in people is the willingness to change their mind. It's a rare quality because we must be willing to give up a piece of our identity, to humbly relinquish our attachment to our ego's opinions or beliefs. And that is my first takeaway from my conversation with Tracy Slepcevic. Most people live their whole lives having never questioned the ideas they were born into and raised with, whether political or religious, cultural or environmental. Tracy Slepcevic grew up on processed food. She was in the military, a willing participant in multiple vaccine programs. But when her young son was injured, she chose to take responsibility. As a result, she looked at all her beliefs, habits, and behaviors with an eye to changing whatever she needed to heal her son. Tracy also chose not to feel sorry for herself or for him. Her energy was not focused on problems, but on solutions. It is this discipline that is my second takeaway from both our conversation and her book. She is clear that there is no guarantee that all children will respond positively to any of the treatments she suggests, but the choice to stand for your child's health must start with a clear and focused positive attitude. Finally, it is Tracy's courage to be public about her experience and her results. If she had been researching and testing treatments for cancer, she would be lauded and celebrated. But in this cultural moment, speaking out about vaccine injuries requires a willingness and ability to face not so friendly fire. None of that matters to Tracy Slepcevic. She is out to help as many parents as she can. When I was growing up, 1 in 10,000 children were diagnosed with autism. Today in the US, it's at least 1 in 36. Yes, diagnostics have gotten better, but this is a massive leap that we have not acknowledged and seem resistant to even look at. Only in the bizarre current climate of division and defensiveness could an announcement to look into environmental causes of the increase in autism, made recently by US Health Secretary Robert Kennedy Jr., could this idea be attacked as damaging? To who? To what? To the narrative that so many have tied their identities to? In an effort to normalize this shocking trend, people have been taught to reframe autism as simply a different spectrum of abilities to be celebrated, as if acknowledging a health issue rather than the health issue itself is the problem. With what other disease or disorder is wanting to have maximum functionality considered somehow offensive to those affected? With what other health issue is wanting to get to the root cause upsetting? And if it isn't the jab, what is it? Surely every parent would want to know the cause either way and to inform other parents about how to protect and help their children. All parents want their children to be healthy and to live their best lives. Surely it is this commonality that we can focus on. I hope you've enjoyed this conversation and will join me for more. If you'd like, share your insights in the comments section and please hit the subscribe button. Stay tuned, be true to yourself, and remember that we are the ones we've been waiting for.